Reprise au débat. The honourable member St. John's East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the honourable member for Rosemont La Petite Patrie for his important and timely motion today and for his ongoing commitment to protecting the environment and moving Canada towards a clean energy future. It is a commitment that this government also shares. It's not surprising, then, that as I consider the motion, I feel myself being inclined to agree with large parts of it. I agree that being a global climate leader and creating a clean energy economy means investing in clean, renewable energy sources. I agree that we must put workers at the heart of that and that they shouldn't have to choose between a good job and a healthy environment. And, Madam Speaker, that's exactly what our government has been saying and doing since coming into office. In fact, we began from a very clear premise that this is going to be the century of clean growth and that Canada must be among its leaders. We have said from the outset that the environment and the economy must go hand in hand. This is not an empty slogan. It recognizes the fundamental truth that we can no longer talk about a thriving economy without regard to the environment and vice versa. Just as clearly, protecting the environment through new sources of energy, clean technology and innovation is what will drive the economy for decades to come. These two are symbiotic and strengthening and reinforcing each other, and they don't work at odds. And that's why our government has planted its flag firmly in the clean growth economy by ratifying the Paris Accord, putting a price on carbon, making generational investments in clean technology and green infrastructure, including a national network of recharging and refueling stations, accelerating the phase-out of coal, creating a clean fuel standard, regulating methane emissions, making unprecedented investments in foundational science, opening up for the first time Canada's offshore to marine renewables such as wave and wind offshore, developing a $1.5 billion oceans protection plan, and together with our provincial and territorial colleagues, developing a national plan for combating climate change and investing in clean growth. All told, our government is investing $8 billion in clean energy projects and renewable technologies. Madam Speaker, we're doing all of this not just because it is the right thing to do, because it's the smart thing to do too. We know that incredible opportunities lie ahead for those nations that develop the technologies and drive innovation for a more sustainable future. Bloomberg New Energy Finance expects that more than $5 trillion will be invested in new energy capacity by 2030. And the Bank of England Governor Mark Carney, good Canadian, calls clean growth a $30 trillion economic opportunity. This is where Canada's economic future lies, and this is what the global future demands. Our government is determined to seize those opportunities by investing today in areas of innovation and imagination. Madam Speaker, we also know that because climate change is a global issue, global action is required. That is why we are proud to join Mission Innovation as one of its founding members. As honourable members know, Mission Innovation is a global initiative comprising 22 nations and the European Union aimed at accelerating the clean energy revolution. Canada is committed to doubling its funding for clean energy research and development from $387 million to $775 million by 2020. One of the most interesting aspects of Mission Innovation is the involvement of the private sector. The Breakthrough Energy Coalition, led by Bill Gates, Richard Branson, and other leading entrepreneurs, is investing in early-stage companies to promote cleaner energy, improve the environment, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. By engaging the dynamism and enlisting the energy of the private sector, Mission Innovation will have breakthrough technologies, bring them to scale, revolutionize our energy systems, create high-skilled, good-paying jobs, and drive change in every corner of our economy. Madam Speaker, that's what Canadians expect of their government. They want us to focus on clean energy and clean technologies. We know that because we asked them through the largest conversation about our energy in our nation's history. Led by the Minister of Natural Resources, Generation Energy invited Canadians to imagine their energy future, how they expect the world to look when their kids and grandkids have grown, and what we are doing now to get us there. Canadians responded in an unprecedented way, with numbers that are eye-opening. More than 380,000 participants, 31,000 hits on social media, 63 engagement sessions in every part of the country, and more than 650 people at a 2J Generation Forum in Winnipeg last fall. That forum brought together for the first time energy producers and suppliers, international experts, Indigenous leaders, environmental organizations, consumers, and all levels of government. What emerged was an inspiring vision of how Canadians see their energy future. And they told us that they want a thriving, low-carbon economy. They want us to be a leader in clean technology. They want an affordable and reliable energy system, one that provides equal opportunities to Canadians without harming our environment. They want Indigenous peoples to be at the heart of decision-making and benefit from these wonderful opportunities. Canadians are looking for smart cities with integrated energy systems, increased energy efficiency, and low-carbon transportation. And they want rural and remote communities to have better options than diesel for generating electricity and heating their homes. And in fact, IceGrid recently won, they're an organization out of my riding in St. John's East that recently participated in and won an Infrastructure Canada event in Toronto with their proposal for renewable energy-backed projects in isolated communities. And I'm really interested to see how that project moves forward. From generation energy, it was also clear that Canadians understand that while a lower carbon economy is the goal, we're not there. We need to prepare for the future, but we have to live in the present by providing energy that people can count on and energy that will turn on the lights when they flick the switch. That means continuing to support our oil and gas resources, even as we develop alternatives, including solar, wind, and tidal. And it is here, Madam Speaker, that I part company with the motion before us. It fails to recognize the connection between providing the world with oil and gas it needs and using the revenues from those resources to invest in clean energy and clean technology going forward. In order to get to the low-carbon future, we need to invest. And in order to invest, we need resources and revenues that can come from our traditional energy resources. So while the government shares the goals of the honourable member, we differ on the way forward. We will continue to invest in clean technology, energy efficiency, renewable energy and green infrastructure, the growth areas of today and tomorrow, and we will leverage Canada's conventional energy sources, improve their environmental performance and reduce their environmental footprint as we continue to invest in more clean energy. That's the responsible path forward. That's the path we're following. And that's the path that will lead us to a clean energy future that I know the honourable member seeks. It's important to realize that today's global economy uses almost 100 million barrels of oil a day, and that oil needs to come from parts of the world where the environmental standards are high, where the carbon footprint of the overall development of the oil and gas is low, like Newfoundland and Labrador's offshore, which is one of the lowest carbon dioxide producers per barrel in the world. It's important to recognize that in addition to the carbon damage that might be caused by oil and gas, there's also human rights and other impacts that oil and gas development has on our global economy. Canada is a leader in this. We make sure that we have growth that works for everyone. It helps fund the hospitals, schools, and social programs that Canadians enjoy. The high standards of living that we enjoy are funded in a large part from our traditional resources. Canada's market share in the decline should be maintained, and as the minister likes to say, we want the last barrel of oil that comes out of the ground to be sold into the world economy to be a Canadian barrel that's the lowest cost to our environment, lowest social cost to our planet. And I know this is an area of concern. It's not all sides of the House aren't going to agree on this. It's an interesting motion in that the three areas really highlight differences between the three parties. We have, I guess, the first part of the motion where we talk about investing in clean and renewables. I think we're going to see that the House and the speeches here and the debate largely agree on this point. When we talk about putting workers and skills and training at the heart of the transition to a clean economy, that's an area where I think we can also have some agreement. But when we talk about whether or not we're going to defend and protect and promote our existing important resources all across the country, certainly in the oil and gas sector, that's clearly where we're going to be at a division. When we talk about the fossil fuel infrastructure that we need to meet those needs, there's a way to read sub-C where you might actually feel that you could support TMX, because TMX is a way to make sure that we have a less environmental impact by making sure that we're going to be sending our oils through pipelines instead of by rail or by truck, which is currently happening. We're going to make sure that the highest levels and standards of protections are available on new pipeline capacity, whereas previous pipeline capacity may very well be obsolete and certainly can be improved. So we'll go to a better future, and I look forward to questions in the debate. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Cowichan, Malahat, Langford.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I appreciate my Liberal colleague's speech. A lot of the reasoning behind the Kinder Morgan pipeline expansion has to do with, the proponents are saying they're trying to reach new markets. Now, the current Kinder Morgan pipeline exports about 99% of its product down to refineries in California because they're already tooled up to deal with diluted bitumen. And I would like to ask him, where's the evidence of all of the buyers who are lining up at the door to buy the product from an expanded pipeline? I'd also like to know, given this government's climate change commitments, how on earth does this expansion and the greenhouse gases increases it represents, how is that ever going to square with this government's climate change commitments? Does he not agree that there's a very real disconnect and that instead of investing $4.5 billion in an old pipeline plus the billions more that will have to be spent to build the expansion, does he not agree that that money could have been better spent here and now in investing in the economy of tomorrow?
The honourable member for St. John's East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for his motion and the question. When we look at the overall investments that the government is making, I listed numerous ones that relate to clean energy and the environment on the innovation side, on the infrastructure side, our support for primary science, and we have so many initiatives that relate to the reduction of our greenhouse gas emissions. Our framework includes more than 50 initiatives that put us on track to meeting our Paris commitments of 30% below 2005 levels by 2030. But it's not just a one-shot deal. It's not going to solve this problem only through a carbon price or only through energy efficiency measures. And we're not going to be able to do it if we abandon our existing economic base. Canadians deserve and indeed should be proud of the work that's done and the revenues that are generated by our world-class oil and gas industry, and allowing them to meet new market demand in China from bitumen. And, it's one of those cases that, if we sell it at top dollar to California, that's not bad either. But the current situation has Alberta selling the vast majority of its bitumen through Oklahoma into the States at a depreciated cost, and that just has to stop. It's a waste of our natural resources.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Silence Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My honourable friend from St. John's East, I know he's on the other side of the country altogether, and so can be forgiven for not knowing anything about dilbit. Bitumen is a solid, and while he just said in this House that the safest way to ship it and most environmentally friendly way to ship it is by pipeline, unfortunately he's got it exactly backward. Bitumen is a solid that is shipped most safely by train. It only becomes dangerous when they stir in diluent in order to make it flow through a pipeline, thus creating dilbit, which is both noxious to human health and can't be cleaned up. But my question really was to the point about the claim of great economic dependency of this country on oil and gas. And I wonder if he knew that at the height of the oil sands production represented 2% of GDP. So therefore 2% of our schools, hospitals, 2% of our social services, not a dependency.
The honourable member for St. John's East.
I'm happy to speak to that last point. While nationally, the industry, and I probably question the numbers because there's interrelation and there's collateral benefits to having such a strong industry, but I'm sure it represents more than 2% of the Alberta economy. And the MPs from Alberta would probably look at that last comment with a certain amount of trepidation and concern. In Newfoundland and Labrador, depending on the price of oil, our oil and gas industry represents anywhere between 14 and 30% of our provincial GDP. It's a massively important part of the economy in the East Coast. I'm sure it's a massively important economy of the part of the economy in Alberta. And even if you just look at the losses of, on average $50 million a day by selling our Alberta oil and gas resources through the U.S. rather than having more diversified markets, that amount pays for a lot of schools, a lot of hospitals, a lot of additional opportunities to create a clean energy economy. And to not do so, I would say, is naive. Thank you, Madam Speaker.